The Honourable Wilson Tucker.
Thank you, Acting President. I rise to speak on the firearms bill, and I understand, I believe I'm the last member to speak before the Minister gives the government reply. There might be? Okay. I welcome their contributions. I think one of the benefits of being one of the last members on a very complex bill, and a lot of members do feel passionately about it and have voiced their concerns and their opinions, is that you can absorb those opinions and which hopefully inform your own. I've listened at length to the debate so far. I think one of the cons, though, is that because people have voiced a lot of different thoughts and opinions, there's potentially overlap with my thoughts, and I'd just be sort of basically repeating what's already been said in the chamber, and I think the latter is probably more true when it comes to the firearm bill, because a lot of members have spoken at a great length about some of the concerns they have for the bill. And I think with this legislation, it is probably best served in committee. I certainly have a lot of questions that I will raise during the committee process, as opposed to talking to the blank wall that is a second reading debate. I will share some of my high-level thoughts and my concerns with this bill. Firstly, I'd just like to say that my personal experience with firearms is pretty limited. My old man did have a farm down in the Vass region when I was growing up, and on the weekends and over the school holidays, I'd spend time on the farm, and we did learn to shoot down there. And I can't say that I shot often, and I certainly don't enjoy shooting rabbits or shooting kangaroos. It wasn't something that I took a lot of pleasure in, but was a necessary day-to-day activity on the farm from a pest control perspective. But I certainly did learn to respect and really fear firearms. So I was filled with a fair bit of trepidation for them. They are very noisy, very powerful, and very destructive instruments. So there are, and we've heard from members who certainly have a lot more experience with firearms. And I take the view that it doesn't necessarily mean I can't form an opinion on something that I don't have a lot of first-hand experience with. But I have listened to a lot of concerns that have been raised, as I'm sure a lot of members have received a absolute truckload of correspondence, mostly emails from people who do have a lot more experience with firearms. In particular, being a member from the mining and pastoral region, a lot of firearm owners from those regional areas, from the mining and pastoral region, who do have significant experience with firearms, and they've shared their concerns with me, and I'll go into those very shortly. The two big concerns that I do have, and I won't go through and rehash a lot of the arguments that have already been made, but the two big concerns that I do have, firstly, is this arbitrary limit, and a lot of members have spoken about this previously, and I take the view that I don't think the government should be mandating a limit, and if they are, then there should be considerable justification where this magic number appeared from. And that's a sort of software term when you have a variable or a number and it just sort of appears out of thin air, and you don't quite rightly know where it comes from, but it's sort of fixed in place, and that's what we're dealing with here. It's a number that's baked in, and there isn't any flexibility in which to change it. So I think with a number that enforces a limit across WA, considering we have over 2 million people, we're in a very diverse and geologically diverse place, I think there has to be a very considerable level of justification for this number, for this arbitrary limit on the number of firearms that West Australians need to adhere to. The other, and really the main point that I'm concerned with, is I will say from the outset that I do support the intention of the bill, and in trying to make WA a safer place. I think it's a noble pursuit. I do not have any concern with what the Police Minister has said in respect to trying to make WA more secure, more safe. That is perfectly fine. However, the minister has failed to convince me and show evidence connecting gun-related crime and violence with licensed firearms. Now, members have asked questions on this, and this is something that we can certainly prosecute a little bit in greater detail during the committee stage. And I've certainly asked some questions as well on the number of firearms out in the community. I did see a number in the West Australian today, 326,000 weapons. I think the police minister and the Premier have previously said 360,000. The Sport Shooters Association also take the view that there's, well, actually they take the view that there's 360,000, but there's a bit more nuance to that number. Now, their opinion, and this isn't, they haven't sort of proved this to the letter of the law, you could say, but they're quite confident that there's around 80,000 weapons that are considered collectibles, antiques, and there's another 80,000 weapons that are in gun stores. So they're not roaming on the streets, they're locked up inside stores. So if you subtract the 80 plus the 80, so 160 from the 360, you're left with 200,000 weapons, which is significantly less than the number that has been previously stated by the Premier and the Police Minister. The Sport Shooters Association also take the view that there's a potential double counting of some of these weapons. So if a gun is licensed to multiple firearm owners, then it's potentially been counted twice. So that 200,000, it goes down even further. So that is a line of questioning I certainly would be pursuing in the committee stage. But it feels like there's been this sort of element, and members have said this, about this sort of fear and loathing that's been generated as part of this debate. And the number 360,000 sounds like a lot. But when you start subtracting and get into the nuance of those weapons, then there could be considerably less that are on the streets, and then considerably less that are actually used in firearm-related crimes in WA. Now, they're the two big concerns that I have from a personal level. And I said, as a regional member, I've certainly received a lot of correspondence on this, and it's overwhelmingly been in the negative. And the two big concerns that have been raised, aside from the arbitrary limits and if these weapons are actually involved in gun-related violence in the state, is the inadequacy of the buyback scheme. And I understand this bill isn't dealing with the buyback scheme directly. However, it is creating what you could say a devalued marketplace for these weapons. So it's not adequately compensating firearm owners for their firearms. So in some cases, and as a consequence of this, some owners are seeing the store owners selling their weapons for a significantly reduced amount. So if the state government is offering you $200 for, say, a shotgun as part of the buyback, then some of these stores are offering $250, but the gun itself is actually worth $2,000. And there is considerable cost associated with actually trying to get that weapon outside of WA and then sell it on a market over in the East Coast. So it's significantly devaluing the cost of these weapons, and it's not adequately compensating firearm owners for these weapons. So that is a big concern that a lot of firearm owners have. As has been stated, there's certainly a lot of confusion in the gun community about the regulations. There's just a level of confusion. It's a massive bill, and as has been said previously, there's only a handful, I'm sure there's only a handful of people out there who've actually taken the time to scrutinise it with any great detail. So there is a lot of fear and certainly confusion in the gun community when it comes to this bill, which the government hasn't failed to adequately explain, and we are waiting for the regulations. I spoke about the numbers, so look, I'm waiting for the committee stage to get into that. What I've got the main concerns that I mentioned around if this bill will actually work in practice. The intention isn't going to match up to the practical effects. It is too onerous for licensed legitimate gun owners, and they're the big concerns that I have. And in listening as a regional member to the correspondence, to the thoughts, and the overwhelming correspondence which has been in the negative listening to people who have more first-hand experience with weapons. It's helped to reinforce my position. And so I've decided to use that as, forgive the pun, ammunition to then help inform my opinion, which is to oppose the passage of this bill. Now, saying that, I'm still looking forward to the committee stage. This is obviously going to pass. So one of the benefits of being a member in this place, when the odds are stacked against you, you can vote against something, but you can still, with the expectation that it's still going to pass, and then you can continue on, and it doesn't devalue your position from scrutinising that legislation for going forward. So I take the view that I will be opposing this bill, and I look forward to committee of the detail, so we can really try and to unpack whether this legislation will do what it says, will make WA a safer place, and look at some of the implications and some of the numbers, and try and dispel some of this fear and loathing that has been perpetrated by this government in relation to this bill.
Question is the bill be read a second time. The Minister.
Thanks very much, Acting President. Can I thank all of those members